So when you guys go down and see my shop downstairs, there's a big like sign painted mural that says everyone loves beautiful, useful things. And it's this meeting of utility and beauty that is my favorite thing. You know, like I do not like create, and this is just for me, I'm not saying that beauty should not exist without utility, but I do not like creating things that don't serve a purpose. Like it's really difficult for me to get motivated to create beautiful things that are just beautiful. Like they need to solve a problem, or they need to like be a thing that becomes a presence in someone's life. So every single thing that I work on ends up moving those two things together. I think that's why with my professional work, I started leaning towards the logo work, because so much of it is like solving utilitarian problems and really like addressing the like core issues rather than just slapping a style on top of something. But I do work on things a lot where I'll be in some random location and like see an ad that I worked on, or like when I worked on Moonrise Kingdom, I was in like Berlin and was on a bike ride with Eric Speakerman, and there was a poster of Moonrise Kingdom, and we stopped and took a picture next to it.
So cool.
Like, I was like, that's me.
Yeah.
And that's really cool.
Tell me about that project in particular. How did that even like sort of arrive in your purview?
Yeah.
You know, you get that email, you get that call, you're like, wow, this is real life. Like I get to work on this project. And then how did that kind of unfold? I
never like dream. Like what is your best project you could want? Like who's your dream client? What's your 10-year plan, or like whatever? I only really am looking at like what's immediately around me and what's immediately around that. Because I'm moved by like, what do I want to do now? Like what's the thing that I want to react to now? What interests me now? And one of the reasons is because then you're always working on things that you're interested in, which is nice. But the other reason is because I always dream so much smaller than what actually happens to me.
Okay.
Like if you told me to like, what's your dream thing? I would name something very, very achievable. Like something that is like, oh, of course, that would stumble across your plate like in 2 weeks, no problem. And I feel like things happen to me all the time that are things that are like beyond my wildest dreams. And I think that part of that is that just sort of like always putting out that like, I'm just happy to be here vibe.
Right.
Because everyone wants to just be around people that are just happy to be here.
Yeah.
And so that project came, like a lot of projects that I get, because they were working with someone else and it didn't work out.
Interesting. So you're like the rebound designer.
I'm often a rebound, and I'm a very satisfying rebound. And so I'm like the one that like soothes you after you've had a abusive relationship with someone, and and you're
just happy to be there.
I'm just happy to be here. I just want everybody to be happy. I want you to walk away and be stoked. I want you to feel like you're a better person at the end of it.
Yeah.
And I think that that's like every working relationship I've ever had is that. And so with that one, I think that the Wes Anderson crew had been working with someone who had a really, really solid calligraphy background. And Wes, as you can imagine, has an extremely specific vision about what he wants to happen. And I think that that person might not have been able to bend their abilities into his vision. And so I got hooked up with the project because one of his producers had been, someone on their art team had recommended me to one of the producers. And so we did a little testy in the beginning, and then it was just me and Wes emailing each other. And that was like a super intense, amazing process. And I'm really glad for when it happened in my career, not just for like, it being a cool project and exposure and whatever. But it was actually, it came at me right at that moment that I feel like almost every creative experiences, right when you've sort of lost your, I love design because design is new and fresh and fun. But before you've gotten over that, like, clients are abusive and abrasive hump, and you're back to being like, I'm just happy to be here. If you approach every project that you have as a grateful collaboration with someone that you trust, who you feel is an expert in whatever it is they're trying to communicate through you, it just makes the whole process really fun for everybody. And so I think like it kind of pulled me out of that, like, clients are trying to ruin your work. Like
this adversarial stance.
Yeah, like an adversarial stance. It like completely evaporated that. And even though like, of course, Wes was extremely particular about what he wanted. Like, I was like redrawing the lowercase r for the 8th time at 3 a.m. when I was in Sydney at a conference, whatever. And that's like the extreme. But of course, I fully trusted his artistic vision.
Right.
And so I didn't come at it being like, you don't know what you're talking about, Wes Anderson.
Right.
Like I came at it being like, okay, I guess I just haven't nailed it yet, you know? And I think that after that project, every time I worked with a client, if they had feedback for me that I didn't agree with, I would be like completely open to being like, okay, I totally get that's what you think we should do. Let's figure out why you think that that's the right move, because I just really want to understand it, because I just want you to be happy. And I think in the end, like one of the reasons why I love client work is because I like love working with other people and love solving problems with other people. And I do think that I'm very flexible and open to what the end result ends up being.
Right.
Versus there's other people that are more like artists and they have a vision, and if their vision is not executed exactly as they originally thought, then they're like disappointed in the result.
Right.
Whereas like, I think one of the things that makes me successful just in general is that I always think that there's like 100 ways to solve a problem. And it's just about what is the solution that works best in this time and place on this particular thing, in the time that we have, with the budget that we have, with the people involved, so I never think we're working towards the one true vision. I always think like, we're going to get the thing that, based on all of these things in front of us, is the thing that makes the most sense with those things. I need to stay involved in the creative process for a couple of reasons. One of them is because I find that 0 to 1 stage to be like really fun, but also very taxing. It's like, it's really difficult. It takes a lot of mental energy. It's stressful. Like you're not sure how it's going to turn out, like whatever. And there are people that love that part. That's like their whole part. And then they want to pass it off to someone else to execute it. But for me, I would burn out so fast if I spent my whole life in the ideation phase and the big ideas and big pictures phase and spent none of it in the execution. And so for me, it's a real balance of making sure that I'm still spending time physically making and physically creating, so that I don't have to solve everything in the beginning. And so that I don't have to put all that pressure on myself to get it perfect before it gets handed off. What's kind of nice about the way that I work, and because I really love working collaboratively with people and evolving things as we move through the process and changing how things are based on how they seem to be happening, it means that it's easier for me to go from 0 to 1. Because I go, all this has to do is take a blank page and put a thing on a page. It just has to be a thing that we can talk about. So like my first goal, like I say this like jokingly to my studio mate and to other people, is like my only goal for round 1 work is to look like I've worked. I have to look.
I have something to show.
I have something to show. I have something to react to. It doesn't necessarily have to be something I'm proud of. It just has to be something that I can talk about.
That'll generate a response.
And generate a response, exactly. Because then if it's not something that I'm even 100% sold on, I can go, I'm not 100% sold on this. Tell me what you think. And then we can have a discussion about it. And then I can go back with their thoughts and intentions and, ideas and mix them all together. And then ultimately what we end up with is something that the people that I work with feel bought into. Because they were involved in the ideation process and I haven't cut them out from it. And I think that that's like one of the biggest unlocks creatively, is just making everyone that you work with feel as bought into the thing that you're working on as you are. Like give them skin in the game. Make them an advocate for the work, because that's how the work lasts. Like they don't want the thing to go away. If they build something with you, they want that thing to exist as much as you do.
When we were talking about folks to line up for these interviews, your name bubbled very high on the list, because when I think about the independent designer, like people who really embody that in their work, in their approach, and how they've structured all of their commercial activity, like you're on that podium. Was that always the plan? Like, why is what does independence mean to you?
It kind of was always the plan, but I feel like it originally came from a place of feeling like I needed to be nimble all the time. You know, like I was a bit of a prepper.
Okay.
In a lot of ways.
Got it. So when shit hits the fan, you're like the first to react. You have a
I mean, I grew up in a small town in PA. I, you know, was like, you know, kind of upper middle class, but then not really once my parents got divorced, and just kind of saw what it is to not be able to take charge of yourself financially and like really guide everything and put any of your trust in like other institutions.
Right.
And so sort of seeing firsthand that things can just evaporate if you have all of your eggs in one basket was really frightening.
Interesting.
And really shaped how I feel. Like, and it just so happened that as I got into being a creative, this sort of idea of like freelancing and being a gig worker and all that kind of stuff was just becoming more normal. You know, because there really weren't a ton of like, other than illustrators, which illustrators are always independent, but there weren't as many freelancers that were like building independent one-person studios like prior to the early aughts.
Correct.
You know, it was like everybody was going to like work for a major design studio and that was their goal.
Their portfolios reflected that. Sort of like that was the aspiration.
And anybody that was an individual, they were talking with the royal we and making a design studio that was them.
Right.
But because I was really interested in illustration, illustrators were always their own name. It started from this place of feeling insecure and that the only way to feel secure was to be in command of my own destiny. Right. And so everything had to be like, I could do it myself. If everything blew up, what's my game plan? You know, I like a lot of people that come from non-wealth. I won't say that I came from like lesser than, but you know, I like didn't understand that debt could be okay and that could like enable things. You know, it was always very scary to me. I was like a person who like bought cars in cash and like I paid off my student loans in 2 years and just worked like a crazy person and ate free pizza from the bar that gave you pizza if you got beer. You know, just because I was really afraid of debt. I realized that like a lot of the independence was, and like wanting to be completely independent was about fear of letting control or letting someone else like have any say on what my future was. You know,
a certain degree of like self-reliance.
Self-reliance. Like just being like, I know that I can figure it out if I'm in command of it. But if someone else is in command of it and I just have to follow along with them, I don't know what's going to happen. You know, and that has been a hard thing to let go of because obviously you can't live your whole life like that. And you can't do everything, especially if you want to do fun, interesting stuff.
Did you feel like it was essential to let that part go at some point?
It was. I actually think that what happened was what
was that threshold in your career? Like how far along were you?
I was pretty far along. When Russ and I got married, we had to sort of start integrating more, and I didn't feel like I had to like fully contribute everything in the same way all the time, that I could like put my trust in another person. And like my center of gravity started shifting away from like me constantly feeling like I have to be building the concrete pad underneath myself to being like, oh, I have this stable foundation. And because I have the stable foundation, I can operate instead of out of fear, out of just guiding my career and life around my interests and what I want to do. Not because I'm afraid of what happens if I involve other people, but because I want the ability to sort of pursue things that I'm interested in. So it was just like, the actual reality of it didn't change that much because I still mostly do things myself and I only collaborate with other people when we really vibe. It made me feel like I didn't have to operate out of a place of like fear, and I could operate out of a place of like excitement and curiosity.
Did your creative instincts evolve along with that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm like a sponge. So I absorb the environment that I'm around, which is why it's like really important for me to like be surrounded by people that are like curious and interested and excited and happy and, you know, like, or at least pursuing happiness if they're not currently happy, you know, like people that are out there trying to do things and make a difference, because I am so sensitive to energies around me, and I'm better at it now than I was when I was younger, but I was like a complete semi-permeable membrane and would just absorb everything around me.
Yeah.
But that was good because I would find myself in these environments with people doing really different things from me, and then I would just be really interested in what they were doing and wanting to kind of understand it. So I ended up walking down a lot of paths that I probably wouldn't have walked down had I not been surrounded by the people that I had been surrounded by. I'm a tech bro now.
Yeah.
So I co-founded a software startup with my friend Chris. And so when you were talking too about these inflection moments in our life, I shared a studio in Dumbo when I was in my early 20s with Chris Shiflett and Cameron Kozan, who ended up founding Brooklyn Beta.
Right.
And so I only ended up in that studio because I was in another studio space, the Pencil Factory up in Greenpoint, with a bunch of illustrators, and it was awesome. Like, you know, literally one of the best times of my life.
Yeah.
But when I quit my day job to go full-time freelance, I had also just bought an apartment, and I was like, I don't need a studio because I can work from my apartment. But I'm like actually the most social person on the planet, and that did not work for me for more than a couple of months.
Yeah.
And the studios in the Pencil Factory were full up, but Tina Roth Eisenberg told me that there was a desk that I could part-time rent in her space.
Yes.
And so I ended up down there, and it was right at a moment when I was like really interested in, like, I had always been interested in like HTML and CSS and stuff, just for like being able to manipulate my own portfolio website and things like that.
Yep.
But then being surrounded by a bunch of web people all the time, I like really dug in. Because I could ask, I had like Wikipedia next to me, like just being like, how do I do this? How do I do this? You know, like right next to me. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's just really nice to feel well resourced. And so I went from just being like the person who edited their blogger's CSS to being a person who could build things from nothing.
Yeah.
That year, I think I released 11 different projects.
Yeah.
But then I realized that I probably shouldn't do that, because when you make new businesses, you kind of have to maintain them.
Yeah.
And so then I was like, okay, I probably shouldn't do that for a while. Recently, I had been thinking a lot about how much I missed working on fun, cool internet stuff. I just kind of really missed that like frenetic era of making weird internet projects where it's just like hacking on a thing for a couple of days and pumping it out there. And it was like, I had a project called The Internet Sends Me Cake, where people would literally send me cake in the mail, and I would review their cake and then link to their portfolio website. There was like, I just did so much random stuff like that. And it was just like the time of weird internet.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was thinking about how I hadn't done that in a while. And the person that came to mind was Chris, who I hadn't talked to in years.
Okay.
Like, you know, like I'd seen him socially, but like he's not one of my out of the blue call people, you know?
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, I should call Chris. I bet he would want to work on weird internet stuff. And so I called him and I was like, hey, I feel like you're also interested in making stuff for like niche markets. Like, what if we just made some cool, very usable things that, you know, 100 people would really like, you know, like just like, you know, not go crazy, just like solve some real problems for people, make a thing that you and I would want to use.
Right.
And then otherwise just like, that's it. We'll just hack on it for a couple of weeks. But then we ended up having this total like mind meld 3-hour conversation in which we're like, and then we could do this, and then we could do this, and then we could do this. And at the end of it, it was basically like the whole vision for Studio Works, which is like to make a business management platform for small creative studios, because there's plenty of business platforms out there, but they're all meant to like capture every small business.
Right.
And because of that, they solve some problems, but not specific ones that you would need as like an independent creative or like a small studio.
Yeah.
They're very back of house instead of something that you feel like you could be confident sharing with a client.
Oh, interesting.
You know, like if you think about like no one ever like feels like using QuickBooks makes them look like a boss, you know, because also your gardener uses QuickBooks.
Correct.
You know?
Yeah.
And so we wanted to like, we were talking about making the thing that's like, you know, since we don't have to make this for everyone and nobody wants to bake things for specific people because they think it's not attainable, that it's not a real business.
Right.
But we're good. Like, why don't we do that?
Yeah.
And just make the thing and then solve the problem for these people and make them really happy.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, this is so great. I love this. But, you know, we need like a whole team to do this. This is like, I learned CSS before, or I learned building before CSS existed. Like, so we need like proper engineers. And he had been more on the leadership end and like operation stuff. And so we kind of let it rest. But then 2 weeks later, the two engineers that he had worked with at a neuroscience startup that he had co-founded quit their jobs the same day and reached out to him to be like, hey, independently,
wow,
to be like, do you want to build something together?
Yeah.
And he called me immediately and was just like,
the universe is aligning.
I think the future is now.
Yeah.
And so he got together with them. And of course it wasn't like an immediate go because, you know, they had worked together on a bunch of stuff. They're all smart people. They all had a lot of ideas.
Right.
So they had basically like a weekend where they all pitched all the things that they had been thinking about. And Studio Works just kind of floated to the top of the pile.
And I love that this has sort of been a recurring theme for you. It's like focus on what's tractable.
Yeah.
And the here and now that you have like full agency over.
Yeah.
And do an exceptional job of that.
Yeah.
Right? And then see what happens.
Make a real impact to a few people instead of constantly trying to make a massive, like a superficial impact to a lot of people.
Yeah.
You know, like go super deep, help someone now, solve a real problem.
Yeah.
And that's like all of my work is just about like, what do I do to like be impactful now? What do I do to solve a problem now? But not in a way that's like ignorant of the greater problem.
Of course.
You know, it's like, if you think about folks that want to like donate to organizations and stuff, they're like, oh, I want to solve the homeless problem, but I don't like donating to the organization because I want the money to go right into someone's hand. And it's like, well, the organization does things like set up healthcare and buy toilet paper and like a lot of the like non-sexy stuff that needs to happen. And if you're just giving to individuals, then the like greater take care ofness of the problem never gets solved. Being aware that there's like greater problems to solve, but being like, how can I most effectively use my time to solve the problems that I can?
Yes.
You know?
And I love that you joke that you are now a tech bro because you've been operating within the orbits.
I've been a tech bro for a while.
Right? You've sort of been in the gravitational well of the Bay Area.
I say I'm tech adjacent.
You're tech adjacent, but you're very adjacent, right?
Yes.
Your partner works at Meta on AI, right? Like you are surrounded by friends and colleagues who are at the helm of incredible businesses in tech. When you think about creating a new software startup, what's the way in which you're going to break that pattern? What are ways in which you are going to absorb the common wisdom that, you know, is sort of like tried and true in tech? And what are the aspects that you think are going to be unique to Studio Works?
I think it's funny because I feel like the thing that's been really interesting about Studio Works is it started as I want to make this thing because I want to use this thing, which is like the every project that I've ever made that I've been really passionate about that has worked has been like, I want to make this thing because I want to use this thing.
Right.
You know, I sort of just started realizing that it combines absolutely every single thing that I have been interested in over the course of my entire creative career.
Interesting.
Okay. You know, it combines my desire to create utilitarian but beautiful things. You know, make sure that there is joy in the process of using very utilitarian basic stuff.
Right.
It combines believing that it's worth solving the problems of niche groups of people instead of just thinking that everything you make has to be good for everyone. Because if something's good for everyone, it's perfect for no one.
Right.
And it also is a bit of a prepper thing, you know, talking about like business prepper stuff of just making a business that actually works. Right. You know, like a lot of people perceive the things that I've done in my career as being me not being afraid of taking risks.
Right.
You know, when really I am very risk averse. I never do a thing unless I think that that thing is going to pay me back or translate into something.
Right.
And some of it is just vibes. Like I know just based on my lived experience, the vibes come back, you know, like it's on whatever timeline it's going to be. It might be tomorrow or it might be in 10 years, but I know that they circle back.
Yes.
And sometimes it's things like spending 15 grand on a letterpress and being like, okay, well, if I sell X amount of prints over X amount of time, this thing pays for itself. Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
And I think the real thing that has worked for me with my business is not needing everything to be like a quick fix. You know, it's sort of that slow, steady growth model versus the like 50x model. And I just approached almost everything that way. Where it's like, there's going to be things that I do that are like financially epic, you know, where it's just like, I do that thing. It's absolutely worth it for the time. Wow, that was a great decision. And then there's going to be stuff that never really goes negative, but it never does all that much like financial positivity, but it has all these other ancillary benefits. And I love exploring all of those spaces. Like, I think if you are just making decisions based on the financial outcome, you leave out so much cool opportunity. And if you are in a space where you have a fortified enough ground to start from, I have my client work and I have other things going on. So even with doing studio works, like, we are going to be like a sustainable business. But at first, I'm probably not going to take my share, and I'm going to let that go to our developers, because this is their whole thing right now. And it doesn't need to be my whole thing right now. And so it's about this like relationship and about like building a thing where I'm not only like solving the problems of our team, but also really just trying to solve the problems of the people using the product, you know? And not wanting to grow beyond that, because I am such a believer in relationships. You know, like, relationships have just gotten me absolutely everywhere in my career. Like, all of my people are like, how do you get that work or whatever? It's always just because someone recommended me. The only reason why Studio Works is rocking and rolling like it is because people really trust that I will make something and I will not disappoint them. Because I have just spent 15 years proving it to them. You know? And I would never, ever want to betray that trust. Never. And I think people know that. And that's why they're like invested in it. And it's also why this thing will be successful for these people. And it's like, people have asked me, they like want to help. They're like, how do we advertise it? How do we do all this stuff? And I was like, don't. Like, we haven't launched the founding members yet. What I don't want are a bunch of people that don't understand that relationship involved in the project yet. When it's at a place where I'm ready for any random person off the street to walk in and use it and to feel like they're having exactly the amazing experience that I promised, then by all means.
We'll pound the pavement.
We'll pound the pavement. But right now, what I want is word of mouth. I want slow and steady. I want the people that are bought in, so I can have this as be like, they're my advisory board. We're like having a relationship as we build this together. And then the people that they bring in, they will be the enthusiasts of like, this is great. You should trust. This is going to be great. Really come, follow us, you know? And that's what I want. Like, if it blew up tomorrow, I think it would be bad. Like, what I want for it to be is slow growth, sustainable. I want it to just be our team, maybe some customer service people. But if we have to grow well beyond that, I think that's actually like a failure of our vision. Like, we want it to be small.
You want to be small, punch above your weight.
Exactly. We all, and ultimately, like, my vision for it, which I think is shared with Chris and with Nick and Sean as well, is that we are not people that believe that any one person should be sitting atop a pile of emeralds, you know, ultimately in their life. Like, we want to like obviously make sure our kids can go to college and that we can like, you know, help our aging parents and all that kind of stuff. But my ultimate goal is to turn Studio Works into like a vehicle for giving back to the community. If we do keep the team really small and don't grow beyond our needs, that becomes possible. But if we decide to like make this into like a proper company and have, you know, 100 employees and whatever, that becomes less possible. So it's about like, what are the goals? And the goals are, make a thing where make a tool that's exactly what people need and not what they don't. Make the team whole for all this time and energy that they've put into it, and then ultimately look for every way to make Studio Works a vehicle to give back to the creative community.
Amazing. You know, we talked about being nimble, we talked about being reputable, about having high integrity. When you look at like tech startups today and all the conventional wisdom that they're soaked in, what do you wish you can just airdrop into the minds
I think what I could airdrop is that it's like absolutely possible to just make a real business. You know, like I think people operate out of a place of both fear and sort of like not wanting to leave opportunities on the table where they're like, this could be this, so we have to do this. You know, like it's sort of like if you think there's a chance you could win the lottery, why not play the lottery?
I see. Interesting.
But the problem is very few people win the lottery. And if you operate in that space and only in that space, then the chances of you being one of the very few people that win the lottery are very, very small. Whereas if you don't think about winning the lottery and what you do is you just try to solve a real problem in a unique way to a unique audience, you know, the chances of success are way higher. And I think like also, if you are building with integrity and people see that, the chances of people shifting wins to a different company just because they dropped their prices or just because they offered one extra feature or like whatever are way less. I'm not actually worried about someone coming up behind us and building the exact same thing as us. If people trust us and they're into what we're doing and they believe in what we're doing, no matter what another company is doing, they're not going to run that way. You know, and I think that's the biggest thing is it's like anybody that's owned a business knows hiring is very expensive, retention costs less, right? And so once you have your people, you just do everything you can to retain them. And the best way to do that is to just really serve them and not be constantly like looking out for like who is the next person that I should be bringing into it. And I think that's the thing that everybody makes a mistake with is that they like grow beyond the people that are their core folks. And then eventually the winds shift and they don't have a really loyal base and everybody leaves, you know, because the first people felt that you ignored them and left them behind. And then the new people are not bought in. And so, I don't know, it's just about really having a relationship with the people that you build for.
Thank you for having us here. This conversation in this beautiful space in the world you've built.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.